Hello, today I'm going to be talking about how to prep for your next ISO audit. So this is written in association with Smart Safety Services. That's me. On the left, I'm Abbie Hughes. I am the head of marketing at MyMobileWorkers. MyMobileWorkers is the market leader within highways and traffic management, allowing businesses to enforce a safe process, prove what they've done, and ultimately get paid by the client. Tom Hobson, he's from Smart Safety Services. He's the one that's helped me put this together today. Tom is a health and safety consultant. We've been working with him in order to learn more about the ISO process. He can help with prepping for any ISO audits and offering professional and up-to-date advice when needed. So let's get started then. What we're going to be talking about today is what most companies get wrong about the ISO process, some of the pros and cons of internal versus external compliance support, and some of the trends that we've identified in the industry related to safety. So where do most companies go wrong? Not keeping supplier registers up to date. You need to make sure that you have all of the relevant supplier information, so insurance certificates and things like that. If you don't, it could be a minor non-conformance, or it could even be a major non-conformance on your ISO audit if it is deemed as more serious. It could lead to a complete failure, so making sure that you have those is vitally important. Making sure that you're up to date with all legislation. I mean, it sounds easy, but it's a simple one to miss. Legislation is always changing. Think back to COVID, we had to change those in the handbooks sort of overnight, really. So just making sure that everything is up to date, everything is in there. Keeping equipment registers, so things like plant equipment, lifting equipment, things like that, all need to be recorded, making sure that they're safe to use. You need to make sure that they're all serviced, they've all had their mandatory inspections, and that the inspection dates are within the legal limits as well. Because if not, again, a minor or a major non-compliance. But not just that, your staff are also at risk as well on that. Making sure that you abide by your own processes. So what this means, this is really easy to be built up on basically. So someone like Tom, who a health and safety consultant, he can help put together a management system, documented forms, procedures, policies, and things like that. But when auditors come in, you need to be able to make sure that you know what your processes are and that you follow them, because if not, it could look really badly on your audits. So you need to maintain the standard that you've already got in place. And keeping an eye on the basics as well, things like PAT testing, vehicle checks, any safety checks and things like that. These are all very simple, very easy to miss. So just make sure that you're on top of those, that everything's recorded and you've got access to all of it as well. So now I'm going to be talking a little bit about internal versus external compliance support. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of sort of an unbiased comparison between the two, just so you can make your own minds up about what you want to choose. So hiring someone internal to manage your compliance support, they have got a better understanding of the company. Theoretically, they've been there for years. They know your processes, they know your customers, they know the management and things like that. So they're already familiar with that. Having an internal compliance support person is really good for bigger companies who need that person there all of the time. But to be honest, the majority of the time you don't need someone full-time, especially if you're an SME. You're talking sort of 40 to 60 K a year compared to a couple of grand a year to provide that level of insight. It does become more important the bigger the company gets, but if you're a smaller company, chances are you would only need someone sort of external for a few hours a week. Someone who's internal might have less knowledge of the industry as well compared to an external compliance support. They've only ever sort of worked in one company at one time. They don't have a great deal of experience. And also, there could be doubts over the legitimacy of their findings. They could struggle to command authority over the findings that they do make and struggle to get those implemented. When it comes to external compliance support, as I mentioned, it is really good for SMEs. It does save up a lot of time. They can provide professional and up-to-date advice. You can choose someone that is specific to your industry, whether that's traffic management, civil engineering, plant hire, things like that. You can choose someone that's specific to those needs. And also they have experience with a wider range of companies as well compared to someone who's internal. If you're having someone external, there could be a lack of control over potential changes. These people can only advise what you should have in place. Actually putting them in is up to you. And with that, it requires management time and attention as well. So Tom and I have identified three major trends that we see in the industry these days. The first one being HSE. So more and more often these days, HSE are coming to site and investigating claims a lot more. So simple things like RIDDORs. In the past, you would report them and you wouldn't hear anything back. Now they are investigating themselves, and with that comes investigation costs as well. It's the equivalent of the police billing you for your time. There was a story that Tom told me about one of the companies he works with. There was a fall on site. Someone unfortunately broke the rib. In the past, this wouldn't be investigated by the HSE. It would be written up, but they wouldn't hear anything back. However, in this instance, the managing director was investigated and got a £10,000 fine. So the key thing to take away here is making sure that you're identifying every single risk possible, and that means enforcing sort of RAMs to get completed, because otherwise you might trip up. Enforced checks and real-time information. So this is something that's becoming more expected these days, with the HSE being more prevalent and the costs of the HSE coming to site. If they've got to launch a full-scale investigation, you've got to make sure that that information is there. You've got to make sure that there's a paper trail. So having these enforced checks and real-time information shows auditors that you know your stuff, that you're serious about safety, and that you've got that information as well. Not only does it help HSE, it also helps auditors. It comes to ISO processes and streetworks as well, avoiding streetworks fines too. Having historical information on hand. So this goes hand in hand with the second point really, but it is important. Tom was telling me an instance in one of the companies that he's dealt with about trailers on the back of vans. Unfortunately, there was an incident on site, and the HSE asked for their the history of the vehicle checks, of the checks against the trailer. Fortunately, this was a guy that was on it and would do them every single day without fail. But it's not always the case. It could be that they would do them in the back of a van on a Friday, or even if they return them at all. So making sure that you're recording that and having accurate records consistently as well, because if you don't, it could lead to investigation and fines and things like that. So they were the key points that I wanted to discuss with you today. If you have any questions, you'd like to see how the software works, we work with over 40 highways and traffic management companies in order to make them more efficient and to be able to work from anywhere. So if you've got any questions about that, you want a demo, let me know, and we'll be sure to help. Thanks very much.